Welcome to Cattle Sense, your weekly podcast. I'm your host, Penny Bowie. Today's podcast is about the history of Cottage Farm Beefmasters in Jackson, Tennessee. This year, the Stonecipher family is celebrating their 50th anniversary of breeding Beefmasters in West Tennessee. But first, hit that subscribe button and share so we can build a herd of viewers together. I would like to welcome to the show Dr. Lowell Stonecipher. I'm very excited to hear the developing story of Cottage Farm Beefmasters. So, Dr. Stonecipher, tell me the story of the very beginning.
Well, when I bought the farm, the older man had polled Herefords, and I didn't know a lot about cows, but I didn't particularly like polled Herefords. And
Mhm.
so I think the first or second year that I owned the farm, I went to a sale with Ray Woodson, who's my roommate in college, and had some Beefmaster cows. The Johnsons had
Mhm.
some Beefmaster cows, and he was a veterinarian with Ralph Johnson. And
Okay.
so my wife said, "Be sure you don't buy any cows." I said, "Oh, I'm just riding along out to Texas. I'm not going to buy any cows." Well, I ended up buying two females, I think. And so that's how it started. And then we were pretty slow about adding cattle and what have you, because I thought I needed to learn a little bit about it first.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
get much into the cattle until probably the late 70s or early 80s.
Tell me first, where did the name Cottage Farms come from and who named it?
Mary Ann named it, but our house is a raised southern cottage, and that's where
Mhm.
the cottage comes from.
So y'all started breeding in 1974. Is that when you registered those first two cattle you bought?
The Herefords were the first ones I bought, but the
Okay.
Beefmaster in probably in '74. We bought most of our cattle from South Texas to begin with.
Well, what breeders influenced you at the time? Was it your local breeders or breeders in Texas?
It's probably the breeders in Texas. Of course, the Johnsons have a nice farm, and we'd go down. Ray and I'd go down there sometime to have lunch and look at their cows and so forth. Of course, I was interested in the history of the Beefmaster cattle, and then going to different sales, learn to know different breeders, and learn more about cattle. Of course, more cows you look at, hopefully, the better you learn.
Can you remember the first bull you bought?
I used raised bulls to breed some of my cows to begin with. So we bought a cow at the herring sale
Mhm.
when it was, I think, the dispersal sale, Mr. Herring. And we bought one of his big cows, and she had a nice bull calf. And so that's what we used to begin with.
So when did you get rid of the Hereford cattle? When did you decide Beefmasters was a breed you wanted to go with?
Oh, I didn't have the Herefords, but a couple of years. So
Okay.
the farm that we had at that time, we could run about 15 to 20 cows.
Where the farm is now, is that part of the farm or did you buy and relocate?
No, that was the first farm that I bought. Then my neighbor had just grade cows. He's really who taught me something about the cattle. I learned from the Johnsons and from Ray Woodson and Bud Pearson was my neighbor. And then we bought a couple of farms from him. Rick's house was Bud Pearson's farm to begin with. So we were close neighbors. We really enjoyed the people and going to the cattle sales. And as I said, seeing the cattle and, of course, seeing a lot of Texas and different areas and Georgia and Alabama. And so we enjoyed meeting the people probably about as much as we did the cows to begin with.
Hmm. You have two sons, Rick and Scott Stonecipher. Did you ever think it would be a family ranch like it is today?
Not when I first started, not really, but I remember when I believe Rick was 15, and I sent him to sale in South Texas, and he flew into Corpus Christi. And of course, he couldn't rent a car, so somebody had to come pick him up. But he spent a fair amount of money at that sale. And of course, Rick was supposed to be going to bed at 10 o'clock. Well, Marianne and I did not know he was staying up till about 2 reading all the Beefmaster magazines. He became a lot more involved with the cattle than I would have had time to or probably would have done.
He was right on top of it to start with, wasn't he?
That's right.
Sounds like to me he is hooked on cattle.
He was 100%. And of course, then when he went to school at Texas A&M, I think he visited more cattle people than he did go to school. But anyhow,
Well, that's great. Well, let's bring them on to the show. Howdy, Rick and Scott. Your dad and I have been discussing the very beginnings of the ranch. Tell me your story of growing up on the ranch in your teens.
Scott's going to go first. I think my
Okay.
first experience was I was 10 years old and somebody didn't show up to haul hay, and I was probably at the swimming pool somewhere, and I got called to get put on a tractor, and I think I've been working on the farm ever since then. Actually, it was earlier than that. I think I was like 12 and Scott was like 7, and Dad was in surgery, and it was raining, and the cows were out. And we had to go get them in and fix the fence over at Bud Pearson's, which you referred to earlier. So that's kind of the earliest. I do have one earlier when I was 8, and he and Ray Woodson were going to go to Texas. Ray Woodson's son and I, Woody, we stowed away in the nose of the trailer. We got down the road a little while before they saw our arms sticking out, and so they had to turn around and take us back home.
Y'all wanted to go, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. We didn't think about what our moms would think.
Yeah. But Dr. Stonecipher, you're lucky that your sons raised their families on the farm. Very fortunate in that they got involved. After talking about this great generation, we actually have another generation of the Stonecyphers coming on. Scott, would you like to introduce your boys?
Sure. My sons Abraham and Owen are actively involved in the operation, and I think they're spending maybe a little more time in it than they are in school as well.
Hey, welcome to the show, Abe and Owen. What I mainly want to know, what's it like living right next door to the main hub of the farm, the barn?
Just fine. We don't know any different. It's been something we've been around all our lives, and so I really do miss it being at school and not just seeing a cow walking out the door. Yeah, and thankfully I'm at school a little bit closer, so I still get to come home a couple times a week, make sure everything's taken care of, and run around and take care of everything. If anything ever happens, I mean, we're just right out the door, right to it. So it's easy and convenient, especially if you've got to get up in the morning or late at night to go take care of a calf or something. It's just right there, so it's not too bad.
I've always been impressed with the marketing that Cottage Farms has done. Let's go through some ads and talk about your ad program a little bit. To me, y'all been in the forefront of marketing.
We started with a cow named Southern Belle, and it just kind of morphed from that, and then we came up with the Ladies of the South, and that's kind of been our theme since then. That would have been in the early 80s. We do believe in advertising. It's how you build a program over a period of time. I think a lot of people look at it as you're selling an animal, you just apply that cost for that, but you really got to look at about spreading that cost and building a brand. Now, obviously, you got to want to have the product to sell, and that matters. Getting quality pictures. So we've always hired professionals to come take pictures of the cows, such as yourself, Penny. But we do believe in it, and obviously we do a lot of advertising.
The interesting thing to me is you take a great donor like Jungle Red, and here she is on one of y'all's sell ad. Is this one of y'all's first sell ads in 1990?
No, we actually started having sales in 82, but really the 89, 90 sales, those were really the kind of breakout sales for us. So over the years, we built our herd around cow families, really to get the predictable genetics behind them. And if you go back in time, the two that we really decided to build a lot around was the Miss Faravana line and the 6/2 line, which was Sugar Ann, Miss Lee, those type of cows, and they blended really well together. So we bring in some Jungle Red, and all. If you look through a lot of the pedigrees, Jungle Red does show up in a lot of the pedigrees if you go back 2 or 3 generations. So really blending those was the basis for our cow herd. And when you think about the donors now, that we've got the Mother Nature cow, Oasis, Deja Vu, really all those cows are still a blend of those cattle.
Y'all tell me about the significance of what y'all think the herd sire base should be in your program. How did you go about picking bulls? And what bulls did you wind up coming out with? Did you breed them or did you buy them?
So for us, my dad told us when we were young, really a bull's supposed to look like a bull and a female's supposed to look like a female. So we are a maternal breed. And so really you want to make sure you know who the dam of your bull is. You don't want to breed a bull that you have no idea if that cow, how she looked, how she milked, what she looks like. So we do focus a lot on that, not only the dam of the bull, but his granddams on both sides. Over the years, these bulls evolve. We've raised a lot of really good bulls over the years, like Sugar Britches, Adrenaline bulls like that. But then as you move on, we start to get to the newer and newer generations. And we've always been aggressive in using the newer bulls because, as you add the cow families, and the predictability in it, you're just getting one more generation ahead. So, right now we're using the brass monkey bull a lot, force of nature, checkmate, our primate bulls. So those are the bulls that we're primarily using right now. And we do use bulls from the outside. I do think it's critical for people to keep an open mind and breed other genetics outside of their herd that can be complementary to the cattle they have.
I want to go back to the very beginning of when y'all first went to sales. Ricky, I know you went to A&M and you went to sell every weekend. Sometimes I know back then there's 2 sales a weekend. Tell me about your adventure in doing that.
I don't think I was at A&M any weekends of the year. I was always leaving. I tried to get classes not on Friday so I could leave Thursday night. And I went to W.T. Young's, the Yarboroughs, Fred and Judy Long. That's where I went on the weekends to look at their cows in the field. I think it's important that you see cattle out in the field and how they actually look, not just in the sales. And then, of course, I went to a lot of sales during that time too.
How did both of y'all learn animals? I know your dad said a bull looks like a bull, but there's a learning curve of what a good animal is. She got a straight back or crooked back or short neck. How did you learn what a good animal is? Is it from breeding or is it from going to those ranches?
It's from some of that, but it's also from making some mistakes. You end up seeing what traits work well together, and you end up figuring out which traits don't work and really accentuate themselves in a bad way. And then when you're breeding animals, you just try to find complementary animals that work from a phenotypical standpoint and from a genetic standpoint.
Okay. Some people never even know what a good animal is. I know when I'm taking pictures, when I see one, I know that's a good one. Take me back to when y'all started talking about your first production sale. How did that come about?
We had it with Johnson's and with Sonny Dement. And so then we continued to have the sale. Of course, we got more cows. Then I built a barn, and that we started having sale with Clark Jones. Clark has been very beneficial in having the sale there and actually having our there for a month or so at a time.
Now, y'all have had some record breaking sales too.
Well, we have, of course, every year it probably got a little better as far as because our quality got better. But I'll let Rick and Scott talk about that.
Yeah, y'all took a lot of records in the breed with $20,000 averages and unbelievable breeding. What causes that to have such high averages?
Yeah, I mean, we were fortunate to have some really good sales over the years, and some of it's timing and luck, but a lot of it is having good cows and at the time. So we've been very fortunate with that.
All right, so I have to ask y'all, and what breeders influence y'all the most, and why?
You know, it was really all of them. I was, as I said, when I was at A&M, I was able to spend a lot of time with men and women who were 40 years my senior, and I paid a lot of attention to how they bred cows, but also in just who they were and how they did things. And so it was really everybody from Joe Hendricks to Fred and Judy Long to W.T. Young, Lee Adair, Jack Duncan, Charlie Duncan. There was just a lot of influence for all of us. Red Thompson and Fred Thompson were big influences too.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bruce Robbins,
And
he's been around for a long time.
when you're out there going from farm to farm to farm, and those good cattle stick out, what are some of the main matriarchs or your best cows families that y'all brought home from those ranches that carry your program on?
A lot of it was the Vanna 293 line. I mean, we owned Vanna and Miss Sarah, her grandmother, for a good while, and also the 6/2 line, which was Miss Lee Sugar Ann line. Those lines were really, you know, in my travels, you know, those were very fertile cows. They produced consistently, good udder, longevity, good conformation cows, and they were consistent. So those were great building block cows. Along, as I said, with cows like Jungle Red, that line of cows, and there are other ones. I'm not saying, you know, there are a lot of good line of cows now, but most of them, if you look back, they go back to those cattle.
Mm-hmm. And the same thing with herd sires. When you're picking up bulls to bring back to the ranch, what other bulls back then could you think of that y'all bred to your cows?
Well, we bred our first bull was Preview 3. My dad paid 65,000 for him at the side on the side of the cow. So
Mm-hmm.
that was back in the early 80s. So that was a lot back then for just a bull calf on the side of a cow. But you know, it really was complementary. So you had preview daughters, and then you needed to come back with something. And King Cotton was a logical complementary breeder for that. TaylorMade at the time was a popular bull. So a lot of it's just been complementary breeding on what our cattle lacked at the time, coming back on top of them with what we felt like was an animal that had those complementary traits.
Mm-hmm. Now I know y'all sure did buy a lot of cattle from Lee Adair. Tell me a little bit about his line of cattle that y'all like.
Well, it was the fertility in that 6/2 line of cows. A lot of it were Miss Lee daughters. The Sexfield cow came from that. And there's a funny story. We bought a pick of calves, and there were four Rangers Pride, which were all the one. This was out of 6/2, but it was a pick of his calf crop. And so they were going to be full siblings to Sugar Ann and Miss Lee. And so we go out there, and there was this heifer that kept standing out. And Scott said, "We need to take her." And she was a Levi Miss Lee. And that mating really wasn't the known mating. Luckily, the Pride 6/2, some of those younger ones weren't as good. So she ended up being, because Scott was right, she was the right pick. And then so that is the grand dam of Oasis. That was a pretty neat thing that occurred from that. But at one time, we had 14 daughters of Miss Lee in the herd because she was really just a great producing cow. And I don't believe you can have too many of a good thing.
Tell me about Oasis, how you got there with those genetics, and what an influence she's been to y'all's program.
Well, as I said, with the sex appeal cow, we had her and we raised a lot of really good animals out of her. Spartacus daughters such as Bombshell and French Kiss. So we did her to Cavalier, and there wasn't a lot of success with Cavalier semen, but we were lucky enough to get her and a few sisters. But she was always just, she's one of those rare animals that you get that really just put it all together. And, you know, from having a perfect udder, she's a big cow, but very correct. You know, you can have calves out of anything, and her animals are going to outweigh at weaning, outweigh at yearling. So they're high performance cattle. They're easy doing cows, the longevity, they live for a long time and fertile. So it's really kind of just everything you want wrapped up into one. So it really gave us a lot of flexibility when you look at her, I think to date she's had, because we had, banked up lots and lots of frozen embryos. I think she had something like 360 calves out of her, lots and lots of different bulls. And there really isn't a mating she didn't work with. So it gave us a lot of flexibility in our program to be able to build a herd around her, and her daughters and her sons also.
That's great to own such a cow like that that works with any bull. It really tells a lot about her. So we're talking about bulls now. Look, got a picture of Force of Nature coming up. He's the bull you're pushing now. Tell me about him and how he came about.
Well, we had so much related to Oasis. Clark Jones had the 8 cow. She's a painted tiger daughter and was really one of the top 5 cows that I, had ever seen. And then Mike Collier had bought her, and he flushed her to Logan. And so this bull was going to be in one of his bull sales, and I saw him, and I'm like, I've got to own that bull. So drove out there. Clark Jones was also wanting the bull, so we ended up partnering on it. So really coming back on her progeny with a Captain Sugar daughter, which is a full sister to Sugar Britches. I needed that bull to put back on the primate bull to put back on those offspring to really bring in the 8 cow and stack it with Oasis. So that ended up being through the Captain Sugar Daughter, Mother Nature, the Force of Nature bull. And when you look at the ads that I've run on the bull, with all his pedigree going all the way back to the 6/2 cow, born in the early 80s, he's just really stacked with genetics, predictable genetics, great cow families, top and bottom. And his offspring really are exceptional. Scott was saying the other day, how do we keep breeding him to more and more cattle? Because his cattle really perform well, and they just have that right cut to them.
Owen and Abe, do y'all have the passion to continue the ranch for another 50 years? I know you're in your 20s.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. I'd say if it's up to us, it'll be 100, 150 years down the road with our kids and grandkids also.
Yeah, absolutely. I've enjoyed, like you said, we've been able to get involved. And so, anyway, just trying to continue that, whether it's with the cows or the relationships or whatever else, just trying to continue it as long as we can. We've grown up with these wonderful animals and just been blessed with these wonderful opportunities. So, might as well keep it going.
Tell me about your experience watching your granddad and dad and Uncle Rick run the 50-year operation.
I can just remember being a little bitty, trying to get my hands on anything I could to help and getting to worm the cows and everything and getting to figure out how much I needed to put on the back. I always remember being so excited to get up in the morning and try to go work cows with them.
Yeah, and it taught us a lot just growing up. We just got to learn from those experiences. And then now, just actually being able to grow up and get more involved, we've really enjoyed that. And I know earlier you were talking about like how you look at cows. We've been blessed enough with the ones we have now. So that's really just helped train our eyes and help us just for the future coming as well.
Yeah, for us, it either looks right or it doesn't look right because that's what we're used to seeing.
You're the only ranch I know that has a bull collection center on the property. How did that come about?
Wesley Tuckville had been working for somebody in Memphis, and he wanted to start it, and so we started the Cottage Farm Genetics Center.
Now, that's cool. I've always thought it was neat that y'all had a bull test center there because you can take all your bulls just right across the road. I tell you, y'all had some beautiful sales there in front of y'all's house. I mean, seemed like 100 head of cattle under that tent, and everything was just so beautiful out there. And I'll remember that the rest of my life. What a pretty display that was. Good way to display cattle too. Where do y'all see the advancement of the Beefmaster breed over 50 years? Because I know the records have changed. The cattle look different from long sheaves to now tight sheaves. Just give me your take on being in the Beefmaster business for 50 years.
Well, there's just been a lot of changes as far as the conformation. The cattle before were, a little sloppier type cows. Bulls were looser, genetics were looser. So I think just over the years, the cattle have become better patterns, better predictability, better performance on the cows, overall. So the breed has progressed a lot. somebody where I have them, if you go back in the early '80s or mid '80s, '90s, and look at the Beefmaster Cowman, and you're looking at the ads that were in there and the animals that have changed, they've changed a lot over those years. Cows really have a lot more meat in them, and there's a lot more consistency with the offspring than there was several years ago. Things, it's what maybe sound like a cliche, but things really, over a period of time, you kind of see the plan truly coming together. So just seeing, all the traits that the breed wants and the cattle industry wants coming together, and these next generations supporting those traits. It's been rewarding, and then being able to see my kids have the interest they do, so that I know that where our herd or where the breed is going to be in 50 years is probably, incredibly going to be different in a good way.
Okay, so what's next for Cottage Farms?
As far as breeding, we don't do things too fast. I think it's incremental gains over a period of time. We don't chase fads or, the shiny object in the room. So you'll see us continue to just hopefully advance in small increments over the years. Our cattle, we hope, continue to get better every year. That's really what our objective is, because if you do it in a good, slow, methodical way, it sticks. You get the consistency there, and it becomes real.
Going forward and what's next, we're going to be in the BBU convention sale down in College Station. We're going to be offering a Force of Nature sister in there. We sold a couple of those in our sale back in June, and they did great. And this one's just as good, if not arguably better. So anyway, she's doing great. And then we also are offering 2 more heifers in the SEBA sale this fall as well. So we're just looking forward to how those go, and we're excited to be offering them.
What a great story that's continued the tradition. It's going to be wonderful from my rocking chair to watch the next generation grow and succeed. Well, this has been another great podcast for the cattle breeders. Thank you, Dr. Stonecipher, Rick and Scott, Owen and Abe, on educating us on 50 years of experience and success. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.